What's happening in that video? Basically, I'm not going to hear you. I can't hear you until I feel like we're connected. You're in my boat. So, if you're trying to give me instruction, if you're trying to help me out what that means, before we connect, it's probably going to be very difficult. Right? And I know you all do it perfect, it's just me, but we know that good communication is all of us know it's an important part of healthy relationships, and it's an essential part of any relationship that you're working on. You have to be able to connect with the people that you're talking to. And by definition, communication is the transfer of information from one place to another. Think about that. That's what you're doing. So if you're not communicating and information's not getting passed, then maybe you're not really communicating with that person, right? So how well we transfer information, that's the question. How will we get that to the person? And I think it's safe for us to say that communication is an important part of relationships, but we often don't take a lot of time to figure out if I'm doing it well. I had a story of a married couple that had a fight. Just, that rare married couple that has a fight. And they were giving each other the silent treatment. That doesn't happen to anyone. They're giving each other silent. No one's talking, right? And 2 days into their no talking agreement, the man realized that he needed his wife's help. He normally, when he traveled, she was in charge of getting him up and getting him to wherever. And so rather than break his silence, he wrote her a note. And he said, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I need to be up at 5 a.m. Can you get me up? And the next morning, he woke up at 9 a.m. to discover that he had not only missed his flight, but he had totally messed up his conference that he was going to. So he's getting out of bed, and he's ready to break the silence. He's ready to go talk to his wife. And he sees a note on his nightstand, and it says, get up, it's 5 a.m. All right. Communication is the #1 reason for relationship problems, and if you look at the #1 reason that people get divorced, the thing that they say is, we didn't get along. We weren't able to communicate. And it is a big problem if you're not talking to your spouse, right? So how many of you have any great relationships in your life that you don't talk to? Just want to put that one out there. Right? So if we want this to be a great relationship, we have to spend time on what it looks like to connect. So in my experience, people ending up saying we don't love each other anymore came down to communication. We don't know each other anymore is what that meant. And whether it's both of us or one of us, it's a problem that we have to work on in a couple. So on page 22, we have research that says happy, healthy couples demonstrate a ratio of 5-to-1 positive to negative behaviors in their relationship. Now think about this. Okay, even if it's not your married relationship, any relationship you have with your kids, with your neighbors, 5-to-1 positive to negative. Now, if we're not communicating, and when we are communicating, it's not pleasant, that's probably not happening, right? And we know that just means, so what are some positive things? Listening, validating the other person, using soft words, expressing appreciation. All the heat that's been on here, it's like getting to meet people. It's a good thing, but it's like we're not used to having the heat on all the time. Affirmation, physical affection, and compliments. Positive. Okay? Here's our negative list. Raising a voice, that look that you give. Neil knows that look. Expressing anger and constantly complaining. Bless you. Constantly complaining. So what can we do about it? How do we fix that, right? Let's spend some time on this 5 magic hours a week. This is a very famous marriage therapist, John Gottman. I love him and I hate him at the same time. Because his whole premise of his research was to figure out if he could do an accurate depiction of when a couple would divorce. And I'm like, why couldn't we do that the other way? Like, what's an accurate depiction of, when couples, what they look like to stay together? But I like this 5 hours a week. And he found out that couples who have great, people listen to this, great marriages only need to connect like 5 hours a week. Now, if you're a spouse out there who's dying for your spouse to talk to him more, I'm sorry. But this is actually telling us that we're probably not connecting even 5 hours a week, other than the grocery list, right? Or the dog that runs away. Yes. Poor Pastor Ralph lost his dog last night. Not lost. He came back. So let's look at this model. Partings. Before couples leave in the morning, they find one thing that each is going to do, and they tell each other about it. Now, why is that? Because that gives me an automatic conversation that's going to happen when we get back together. It's a cheat sheet. What's anything big going to happen to you today that I can pray for? Are you meeting with someone? Are you going to have a tough encounter? Are you going to, talk to your boss? Are you going to have a difficult place, situation at work? What can I pray for today? So I'm connecting, and I'm actually setting up another encounter later. Sounds simple, right? Okay. And we're talking 2 minutes 5 times a day. 5 days a week, 10 minutes. Reunions. At the end of that workday, these couples have a low-stress reunion conversation about that day. Now that's the 20-minute one. And I want to tell you something. Some people call this the 2 chairs. You have a place that you go to in your home where it's just for this. And why is that? Maybe because one of you needs to know that it's just for this. But possibly your whole family needs to know. I would contend that when you sit down and you reconnect with your spouse at the end of the day, that your kids are getting a model for what it looks like to be a good parent and a good spouse. And even if they're little, they can be told that, hey, we're taking 20 minutes. I hate to say turn on the TV, but entertain yourself for 20 minutes.
Set the cat on fire.
Set the cat on fire. Not a good idea. Yeah. So that time is very special, and it's the difference between an average interaction relationship and a great one. A great one, people. Now, during that 20 minutes, phones off, computers off, iPads off. And I'm not talking about the lists, what the kids did set on fire during the day, what we need to get done. I mean, he and I are guilty about that. We sit down, we start talking about, okay, what do we have to get done? And then we're like, stop. Talk to me about how you're feeling, how your day went, how that meeting went. I know that when you guys were first dating, you did this without a lot of effort, so I know you can do it. 20 minutes a day. And I have couples, I mean, I hate this for you, bless you, that you might have to set a timer, but set a timer then until you get used to it. And after you get used to it, you will love that emotional connection so much that it will be a big part of your day. And if you don't have 20 minutes to sit down, make dinner together and talk. Do something together. Guys love to do things together. Right? Admiration and appreciation. I had everybody can say, well, I don't have time for that. Now, you have time to text your spouse and tell them they're special and that you're thinking about them. You have time to text your spouse and tell them they're not special, so this is definitely you have time to tell them they are, right? I had a client who was a neurosurgeon one, and she's like, I literally cannot have my phone throughout my entire day. And I was like, then you can figure this out. You're a bright man. And every day he would leave a note for her. Before he went to bed, he would write a note to her. And he would leave it somewhere in the house. It was like a treasure hunt for her. But she knew that she was admired. And I think that can go both ways. Now, listen, I'm going to be, because we're, in a pretty adult crowd, I am not against sexting your spouse. That's kind of cool. However, please know that I don't think the internet is private. And that I think all of this stuff eventually could be found. So whatever you're sending, be very, very careful, right? That's just my opinion. You got to do what you got to do. You guys are married. But I do think that it's important that you connect and say, I love you, I miss you, you matter. Right? If you're not doing that, not guilty, we're starting a new habit. Okay? Affection each day. Each day, 5 minutes, holding hands, cuddling, put your arm around. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to get picky. That does not mean as soon as you touch her, they're immediately headed into the bedroom. I'm not saying that it won't go there, but give your wife a break and just give her a hug. I'm in again, adult crowd. I had someone come into me and say, well, you asked me to do that, and my wife said she hated it. And I said, really? I mean, you didn't like being hugged? You didn't like... And she said, no, you come into the room and grab my body parts. I'm like, oh, okay, that is... Okay. Let's think about this. Yes, that's not fun or sexy, right? So just touch each other. It's, we forget to do that. Isn't that silly? Cuddle each other, on the couch. Sit a little closer. Put your arm around her when you walk into the grocery store. Okay. And then one weekly date. And I know that I hear a lot about that, but this does not have to be where you're romancing and have this great big, everybody gets dressed up. I do like that sometimes. I mean, that can be an option. But it's important that you have this couple-hour time frame together. That's what I'm asking. Do a puzzle together. But as long as we're spending time connecting what you're doing, that's up to the two of you. If you have the option, and it's the conversation that you need to have. What do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy going out to dinner? I was listening in our counseling center. We would play a radio station in the waiting room, and Focus on the Family was on. And the guy was saying something about drive-through sex. And I was like, what? That's awful. What? So I'm like leaving my office, sitting in the waiting room, like, what is this guy going to say? I'm going to have to write to Focus on the Family. And I say that in the contempt that this date night may be that 20% of the time where there's flowers and there's music and we get dressed up and we meet all the emotional cues. that are usually in a female. But then on the other, or excuse me, 10% of the time. And then on the other end, that we have that 10% of the time that someone in the household, male or female, has a physical need. And I want to say that to you, 10% of the time. 80% of the time, our middle ground should be when we are both connecting. Both of our needs are getting met. If that's not happening, I need you to kind of play that out in your head. Okay? One end of it, yes, I have some physical needs, and they may need to get met 1 out of 10 times. If you have to keep score, 1 out of 10 times. And then on the other end, I have emotional needs that need to be met. But I can't do that all the time either. Those dates are expensive, right? 1 out of 10 times. In the middle is where we should try to meet. We're having conversations and we meet each other emotionally and physically. You with me? Okay, sometimes people are feeling bad and they're like, I don't want to hear that. I'm like, I'm sorry. Shoot, Neil, this shuts off. All right, let's turn to the next page.
Can I add something quickly?
Yeah.
So, I
I
don't
didn't know you were
know,
talking to me.
there's nothing, almost anything you're good at, you actually have to invest time in. So 5 hours in a week is not a huge investment. Some of us invest more time in playing games on the internet,
Watching TV.
watching TV, only if the Browns are playing,
Yeah.
or finding a different channel.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it needs to be a goal for you to spend this time. But it needs to be an agreement, a goal for both of you. All right? So let's talk about healthy communication, all right? Now, some of you may have heard this before, and I want to do it as a reminder. Some of you may have not heard it before, but what I have learned is these healthy communication tips, here's why people struggle with these, I think, why people struggle with these. Because they're meant for two healthy people. And when someone's got a little trauma in their life, these are really hard. And so I do want to talk to you about that as well. I'm not excusing that you shouldn't try. What I'm saying is, these are our end goal for communication. But I get where you can get triggered on that end, and I want to give you some tips when we go a little further for what I call them high conflict. That we're that relationship where it seems like we can't open our mouth and bam, we're into it. And that may have been you before and you've learned a different speed, but I think, especially if you're a pastor or our counselor, this is the couples you're seeing. They're struggling. So I want to give you some help for that. So what are some healthy communication tips? Like we talked about, one of you, well, I haven't talked about this yet, but I'm going to. One of you might be more of a talker than the other. In your marriage, is one of you more of a talker than the other? Women have more words, period, but that's not necessarily that attachment style. One of you might be more willing to communicate than the other. But I often tell couples, there's no prize, think about this, there's no prize for winning the argument. Right? You don't get anything if you keep going with the fight. Nobody's going to come to your door and go, you did it. Ken, you did it. Thank you. You won. Right? In fact, you're going to lose because you're going to have distance. So what I'm saying in a counseling sense is take a break, stop, back away for a second. High conflict couples need adult timeouts. Right? And that may be, I would say, well, we'll learn how to set our own rules for that. But our little midbrain, our little amygdala gets massively triggered when we're escalated like this. Our body temperature goes up. Our blood pressure goes up. Y'all know this. Go to the doctor. Have them take your blood pressure. It goes up, right? And your pulse rate goes up. I contend this is a very bad time to have a fight because you are escalated internally and externally. So timeouts are imperative. Now, what does it look like to take a timeout? Well, research says 20, 30 minutes for this to settle down, assuming you calm down. Some people stay in the mode. So you need to know when you're settled down and you can go back and have a decent conversation. I believe that a lot of the crazy highway fights and they happen when this is triggered, right? You know, where you just get immediately escalated. Road rage, you know, and we need to settle down before we come up with our answer. And the Bible tells us that a wise man will do that, right? So I say that both of you can call a timeout, right? No questions asked. Now, one of you is going, oh yeah, they're never going to talk about it. We're never going to get back to it. My timeout has to have a time frame. I'm going to get back to you in an hour. We'll see you in the bedroom or see you in the living room. I've got to pray about this. I've got to be, settle down. Does that make sense? Right? But you absolutely have to go back. Even if you go back and you're not settled down and you have to say, I'm not ready, give me another hour, please. Even if you have to say that. Because, have you ever been turned down for sex? Seriously, people. What does it feel like? Right. So what do you think it feels like to your spouse when you're telling him we're never going to get back to that emotional conversation? It feels just like that. It feels like rejection. It feels the same. Right? And I know that this gets everybody starts squirming in their seat because they're like, yeah, oh. But that's okay, because what we're doing is we're taking in new information. We're learning how to do this better. So if you're that people that need the timeout, then you need a timeout. All right, so let me talk about one more kind of high conflict trauma thing, defensiveness. Is anybody defensive ever? What did you say? Yeah. Did you raise your hand? No. Okay. So, what is defensiveness? What is actually happening? Exactly. You're winning the argument. You don't want to feel dumb. You don't want to feel shame in the moment. I have just said something to him that has triggered shame in him. Right? All I said was, here's a good one. Can you slow down? That ever happened to you? Please slow down, or just slow down, right? Why does that bother him? Because immediately he goes to internally, I'm not doing it right. He's not listening to the fact that I had a car accident a year ago and going too fast is triggering me. He's not listening to that. He is deeply going to inside himself going, I'm not doing it. I never do it good enough for her, right? I've triggered shame in him, right? So defensiveness is just telling then him saying, well, you drive crazy. You drive crazy too, right? Pushing back that feeling. So when you're defensive, know that you know that you know. Here's high conflict conversations. That something in me is being triggered. That's why I'm pushing back at you. It is not what I said. It's what's happening internally in him. Now, two things. I'm not on my notes, Neil. I'm sorry. Two things can happen with that. Is he can start to have an understanding that he gets triggered by those things, which is great. But even greater is I can get an understanding of how to say that to him because I know it triggers him. Honey, you know the speed's bothering me. Can you please slow down? What have I just done? Took it off of him, no need to be defensive. Do you got that? Right? So, I think defensiveness is a high conflict trait in couples because they're pushing back, but they're pushing back because they have their own triggers. All right? And I would say that we all have them. But I want you to know that if you're defensive, it's not your spouse's fault. A lot of us think, well, I'm defensive because of the way they talk to me. I'm defensive because it was my choice, because something that I'm pushing back with. Are you following me? Yeah. And I don't want you to take notes and tell your spouse later, did you hear her? But that is actually in the next chapter on page 37. 36 and 37 are the timeouts and the defensiveness. Here's what I'd like you to do if those are things in your house. I'd like you to go through those exercises. I would like you to spend some time working on that together. And that one actually, at 37, 38, and 39, okay? That one actually is something that will transform how you have conversations. Because somebody won't come in there always feeling like they're under attack. If we're always going to have defensiveness, then we're going to struggle. The last thing in that group with high conflict is validation practice. Now, this is something that we get trained as counselors, so it comes a little easier for me. You just sit and nod your head, and you know that I'm hearing you, right? And that checks. It feels good when you know, oh, that person's getting me. They're looking at me, they're hearing me. But I can take that a step further and repeat what you just said. So if the roles are reversed and I say, can you please slow down? It's making me nervous. Neil can look at me and say, I think you're telling me that your fear is, up there and you really need me to drive a little differently. Now, some of you might be going, duh, but the truth is that's slowing my brain down. The truth is it's letting me go, he heard me. He heard me. And it'll give me a moment to go, was I even rational? Reflect it back to me. And it was like, oh, that didn't even sound that good. Right? It gives me a moment to go, is that what I'm telling him? Because if he gives me that second, I might say, you know what, I might be trying to control the driving again, I'm sorry. I might. Right? But by being calm, not being defensive, validating what you thought you heard me say, it gives us a moment to just slow that down. Simple little tricks, but if you're that couple that gets escalated really quickly, most likely there's some triggers back there, and I want to help you with those triggers. All right. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's jump back to page 24. What time is it? Okay, good. Huh. I jumped way forward, didn't I? Neil's going, oh my gosh, speaking of ADD. All right. You think you heard me say that? Yeah. All right. All right. I statements. You've heard of those a lot. And this very small thing lowers the chances that your spouse will need to defend themselves. Because I'm talking about what I'm feeling. But be careful that you don't reverse it. They're not that easy to do. This is something you have to practice. Because if I'm really upset with someone, rather than saying, I feel, or I understand, or I believe, I see you doing this. I see you driving badly. Okay, no. Now I have not kept it in the, I feel nervous about how the cars go, how we're driving. Do you see the difference? Right? It's easy to not be able to put that into in a format where I'm actually saying what's going on with me, and I'm telling you what's going on with you. Right? So a you statement, you always leave your stuff everywhere. Right? Nobody always does everything. You don't care about my feelings. You didn't text me like you said you would. You embarrassed me at dinner last night. You never tell me how you're feeling. Right? How do I reverse those? I feel frustrated when I come home and the house is messy. I am going to go off track 1 second. I was telling him, he's like, that's not in our notes. I'm like, I had a couple, this messy thing was their thing. Like, he was super neat, and she was not so neat. Let's just put it that way. And he would come home and, the house looked like a bomb had exploded in the house. She was homeschooling kids, and it is what it was. They had animals. It was a mess. And we got down to a compromise of, when he came home, before he came home, there had to be two rooms that didn't look like that. So I want you to think about that when you guys are settling arguments. It's always a compromise. It's always a compromise. The problem isn't the person, it's how the person likes their home. I always say the problem isn't you, the problem isn't you, the problem's right here in the middle of the room. We need to get together and solve that problem. Right? Then I'm taking it off anything being personal, and that's what these I statements and you statements do. You gets personal. Right? I puts it back on, okay, this is what's going on with me. This is what's going on with me and possibly my triggers at the moment. Okay? So I feel frustrated when I come home and the house is messy. I feel frustrated my feelings aren't heard and acknowledged. I feel worried when I don't hear from you and I just want to know that you're okay and safe. That's the opposite of you don't text me. There's a hard one when you embarrass me. I felt really embarrassed the other night in front of friends when the topic came up because what was my trigger? It's about me. Instead of saying you never talk to me about your feelings, how about saying I would love to know how you're feeling about whatever it is. Does that make sense? Like I said, they're not easy. They sound easy, but I'm telling you, in the middle of a fight, you're like, I'm back to you. And you're always and never doing something, right? When you're upset, you might say, you never help me around the house, and you're always doing that. And we want to get to that, I feel alone with the housework, or I appreciate it when this happens, when we're partners in the house. So number 2, be specific, okay? That's the always, never. People just don't always or never anything. You know, we have to be specific about what it is that I'm not loving right now, or that I am loving. Remember the 5-to-1 positives? Be specific about what you are loving. Sometimes we ignore the fact that that person does consistently take out the garbage, or they do consistently take care of the kids, or they do consistently do all the doctor's appointments, or whatever it is. And it's a great time to, to be thankful and grateful about what they're doing. Here's some really cool research that the same part of it, the neuroimaging when they show, this is your brain on drugs and it lights up like this, right? That neuroimaging, the same part of your brain that lights up when you're anxious, lights up when you're grateful and thankful. They cannot light up at the same time. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything be in thankfulness, right? It means that God knew that from the beginning of time. So take a moment, if you're anxious about your relationship, to flip it and go, what am I grateful for with this relationship? There's all kinds of, counseling strategies that have you journal and stuff like this. Is what it's about. It's trying to help that imaging. Isn't that cool? I think that's really cool. I came across that research and I was like, go God, right? Go God. And there's probably a lot of those because He created us. Okay. Avoid mind reading. Women are really great at this. We know what everyone's thinking. But the truth is, we don't. Right? And I'm the worst because I'm a counselor. I'm always trying to guess what somebody's thinking, right? So I'm like double whammy on this one. But the truth is, unless I ask, I don't know really what's going on. And he and I will actually get into it on this very topic. And I know I'm throwing us under the bus, but it's easier than throwing you guys under the bus. But it's this very topic. He'll be upset or I'll be upset, and we'll stop and go, did you just guess what I was going to think about that? Did you even ask me what? Because that's not even what I meant. Has anybody ever been there? Falsely accused? Yes? Yeah. So take the time to go, okay, I'm not a mind reader. All right? Express negative feelings constructively. And we talked about that. Yes, you will have disappointments. You will have disapproval towards situations. But how we express those feelings is really important. In any relationship, please, understand that these rules can relate to no matter where you're struggling with a relationship. That if you can sit down and say, I'm really disappointed that you're working late again tonight. It's very different for you. Clearly don't care about me or the kids, or you wouldn't come home so late. Yeah? It gets quiet when it gets personal, I know, people. Okay. Listen without being defensive. We talked about that. We talked about constructive ways to do that, but we need to remember when someone gets defensive, they often feel criticized, right? So it's up for us to know, did we criticize? Or did they actually get triggered somewhere? Because I can help that. I can help by the way I say that, you know? Number 6 goes hand in hand with that. It's an important point to make. Think before you speak, because you may say things you regret. You know, that's that 20-minute timeout. It is almost impossible to put those words back in a bottle. Many of us will have to do forgiveness over some of the words that were said in our relationship in the heat of a moment. And we do not mean them in the heat of a moment. We're just mad, and that little amygdala is just triggered. Right? And so I can come back and I can do the apology that we looked at, yesterday. But the memory of that person I spewed those words out to is still there. And if you're honest, you can remember things that were said to you probably from a long time ago. Because, well, we're not going to go into the science of that, but the reality is that's how our bodies work. That's how our memories work. So if you're that angry, high conflict, take a time out. It's imperative. It will save not only this relationship, but probably another one that you might have trouble. I mean, think about this. People, how many of you have had just horrible service somewhere? You're at the DMV, and sorry if you work at the DMV, and you're finally 100th to get up in the line, and then they tell you to get back in the line or something, and everything you want to say, right then. Right? It's triggered. It's triggered. But that's exactly, what I'm talking about, what's happening. It's the same thing. Breathe, take a moment. Take the 20 minutes if you have to. They're going to tell you to sit down for 20 minutes anyway. Literally, one of my tricks is, I'm going to use the DMV. I just made it up right here. But my trick would be to sit down and try to think of 2 things that I'm thankful for the DMV for. Truly, and it might take me the whole 20 minutes. But I am trying to change how my brain is seeing the situation at the moment. Right? In this new book, I write about a lady that came to me, and she talked about the gift of rejection. I'm just going to use that as a teaser for you if you want to read it. But that was a big deal to me, to understand that how she came out of there, how God provided when she looked at a situation in a different way. All right, so let the other person speak without interruption. Oh, boy, right? How many of us are just framing our response while their mouth is moving? We see your lips going. We can't hear a thing you're saying, but I'm ready to tell you my side of the story. Remember what I said about the high conflict couples? The importance here when I have to validate their point is that I have to listen to their point. I actually have to pay attention and stay engaged to listen to their point. Right? So just tell yourself, I have to listen to everything they're going to say because I'm going to have to repeat it in nice words. Is this what you're saying to me? Right? Now, they're going to have to do the same. As soon as you respond, they're going to have to, validate what you just said. It can take a little longer to have a conversation, but you're going to walk away a little better. All right? Last but not least, freely express those positive feelings. Force yourself to. Look at that beautiful bride in the eye and go, what is it I love about her? Oh, right now, nothing. Right. Yes, she's a good mother. Thank you. You know? And express that. Sometimes he will do that out of the blue, and I'll think, what in the world does my hair have to do with this conversation? But he's doing just that. He's trying to think of something positive about me in the moment. Oh, he likes my hair. Right? But it will slow things down. It will slow things down. All right. Tips for good listening. Believe it or not, number way to be a better communicator is what? Listen. Hallelujah. It's not talking. We're convinced that so I'm just going to read through these because I can see the time. Be aware of your tone. Keep that comfortable eye contact. Don't be looking at your phone. And I don't want to forget the tone thing. Tone, if it's caustic, man, you don't think I'm there, right? Yeah, I'm listening. I can hear you. Right? That does not tell me you're listening. You're actually still mad, right? Keep comfortable eye contact. Lean toward the other person. These are counseling 101. But it's hard for you to not think I'm watching you when I'm looking you in the eye and leaning into you. It's very hard for you to say you're not listening because I'm listening. Right? And I'm actually, at this point, should be trying really hard not to form my response, but to really listen to what you're saying. Even if it doesn't make sense to me. This is how I'm going to communicate better. Have a non-defensive, fairly relaxed posture. I mean, seriously, if we're coming at this conversation like this, how many of you think that person's open to you? No, they're not. Or they're half turned toward you, doing something else. Stay in there, right? And this one's weird, but sit or stand at the same level. Sometimes, and I'm picking you on you again, but he'll try to make a point and he'll stand up. And I feel like, that person's trying to get above me for some reason. Why? And the truth is, you are. He's trying to make his valid point. And it's important for us to, we will say to each other, just let's sit down. Let's sit down and discuss this. Okay? And avoid these distracting gestures like that I've been doing up here. But, your pens, your computers, if anybody's got any weird habits where they're, constantly flicking something, that doesn't tell me you're listening. Right? All right. Neil, I want to do the communication ladder real quick. You hear me? What time?
I think this is busy on the slide. It's a little hard to read there, but it's in your workbook on page 26. And we give this to you because often when we talk with couples, they say, I don't know how we got here. They seem very disturbed, and this is an easy conversation. And what I want to say to you is communication is a movie, not a still shot. All the communication up to now goes into the current. Okay? And I actually got this through a download, and I want to share it with you. And I want you to use it as a tool to say, where are we at in our relationship? So it's almost like a dashboard. And I was given a picture that if we look at our communication patterns, do we ever compromise? And there's a progression that happens in our communication. Critical words, defensiveness, dishonor, contempt, resentment, to indifference. When you get to indifference, it's a scary place. Okay? And we can either build each other up or we can tear each other down. Communication is so important because we're doing one or the other. You don't have the option of doing none of the above. It's one or the other. And what I began to realize in our own marriage, when the Lord said to me, I trusted you with her destiny. You're the one person. And He's trusted you with the destiny of your spouse. We're in serious business, folks. Are you propelling your spouse toward what God created him to do? When they need encouragement, are you going to be there? Okay? And the other path is actually the building up path. Attentive, engaged, vulnerable, honor, trust, intimacy, new realm. I'm not going to talk as much about new realm, but if you'd like power, it comes when we become one in Him. Okay? So if you're missing power, start inspecting how you use your words in this process. I want to encourage you that we're building something together. And it can be something that's incredibly powerful, or it can be something that gnaws at you day and night, where you long for someone in the battle with you. Okay? And I don't want you to come out of this accusing yourself. That's not my intent. My intent is to give you the warning light, like on a car, of where are we at in our relationship. Let's problem solve this together. Are we building something upward, or are we tearing something downward? And it's a skill and a habit that has fruit. It can be bad fruit, or it can be good fruit. And so I want to encourage you that your spouse is a living, breathing person. And when we water it, when we give them encouragement, when we give them positive words, they're going to blossom. They're going to become sometimes more than she dreamt she got. But it's your job to see that. You know, I started in marriage wondering what I was supposed to get. And when He shifted my mindset to what am I giving? What am I giving my spouse? It changes the algebra in your relationship. We don't have to measure it. We don't have to weigh it. It's not fair. It's not whatever. And I'm going to speak to the men specifically. The Bible's standard for us as men is as Christ loved the church. We're to lay our life down. We're to give all. Okay? And this pattern was a hard one for me to step back, and from time to time I still look at it and say, where am I at? Because we all take detours along the way. Okay, it's fact of life. But I want you to be able to say, wait a minute, time out, I can do some things differently. Am I honoring my wife? Do I see what God sees? So, again, as a married couple, we're to start to create a bond That bond is unbreakable, I would argue, from a big piece of right here. Are we weaving our lives together in such a manner that we can overcome the disappointments, the challenges, the difficulties, because we've invested in it beforehand? Okay?
Awesome. All right, so the last thing, is this yours? We got all kinds of books out here. Then we're going to be on page 27 on this one. So when you do have those conflicts, how do we work through that? Or I should say, if we do, right? All right. Successful couples, I just want to say this, have the ability to solve problems. Right? That's our goal, is we got to be able to get through a conflict. And perhaps we experience times when I'm sorry was not enough. It didn't bring the necessary healing or feelings change, and the pain remained, and maybe even increased because you didn't feel heard. That's why we want to help with resolving that conflict. When we can describe the other person's pain well, it's a powerful tool to help them restore what's been separated by hurtful words or actions. For example, how attracted are you to your spouse when you're fighting or mad at them? What happens is that your spirit is reacting to unforgiveness. I mean, think about it. Why do you think they call it make-up sex? All the men look up at me. Whoa, we're going to talk about sex. Yes, we are going to this afternoon. They call it make-up sex because your bodies are literally attracted to each other. You know, there's nothing separating you right now. We've resolved the conflicts. And they're like magnets. I would take that to heart if you're walking around right now and you're not feeling that. And it's on you, not your spouse, to figure out what that is. But I'm not attracted right now. My body is not attracted right now. I'd contend that our God, who knows everything, gave you the body in your relationship that you are literally attracted to. It's the perfect bum for you. May not be great for somebody else, but it's perfect for you. Right? He knew that. He knew the personality, he knew the body. So because of that, when I'm not feeling it, this is something that I want to use. All right? Proverbs 24 through 26 tells us, he kisses the lips who gives the right answer, and that's what this is about. Because there's a difference between coming up with a compromise or just resolving a conflict and complete reconciliation. Right? I can have figured out, the garbage needs to get taken out on Tuesday morning, and I need you to not forget. But I may not have reconciled to you. I may not have reconciled to that relationship, whatever it is. Now, remember we said yesterday, good boundaries are some relationships I won't reconcile with. It's not healthy for you. That doesn't include your marriage. All right? Resolving conflict is what we first need to do in order to come up with a compromise. In reconciliation, we're acknowledging that we have hurt or that we have wronged that person. Reconciliation repairs our attachment wounds. It does not solve just the agreements. Are you guys getting the separation between the two? Okay. Sometimes we need to reconcile our wounds before we can get to solving a conflict. Like, I can't get connected to you enough to even solve that conflict because there's a wound. So trying to work through a conflict when our heart is still filled with offense and unforgiveness is another reason why people get stuck. So it's really important. Trying to work through conflict when we're filled with offense is why we will get stuck. I worked with a couple, with a man who had struggled several years on and off porn. And we're going to touch on that a little bit today. And this struggle caused them, of course, to have significant problems in their relationship. But every time they'd try to solve the conflict, they'd try to set up rules to be safe, right? Which is good. That's good. You know, what are our safety rules? We couldn't get through because they had never reconciled. There was still a lot of unforgiveness and offense being held. Their hearts had never reconciled. And so I couldn't get him through that step. Whether he succeeded or failed, he was going to fail. Because she was holding stuff. She didn't even know she was. You with me? Do you understand that? Okay. So, steps, how to have a great fight. You know, remind yourself that healthy relationships require compromise on a regular basis. Remember, our goal is not to win these arguments. Okay? Our goal is actually best for everyone concerned, you know, is that we actually resolve the conflict. It's not to win, but that we actually get a compromise. All right? You know, and as long as we start those discussions off on the right foot, we'll increase the odds that that dialogue will go better along the way. And that's the things that we talked about. If you want or need something in your relationship, demanding it will never work. And I am a little bit going to talk to the men here, okay? Please don't kick me out of your church. But you cannot demand your rights because you're the spiritual leader. That's not going to work. That is not how Christ loved the church. Did he come in and demand? No. No. Was he solid on what his rights were? Yes. Did he have a loving way to do it? Yes. You with me? And I hear that a lot, especially in old conservative churches, you know. She's going to listen to me. I'm like, probably not. Probably not. You probably lost her a long time ago. You know? Demands almost always create resistance, and they're ultimatums that lead to breakups. You know, on the contrary, requests tend to be much more effective in getting results. Always remember, our goal is to make your partner more aware of and responsive to our needs. That's always your goal. So how you say it matters. You know, when you think about this, you can say, just think, when we're out with other couples, I feel like you're not really with me, you know, you're totally immersed in talking to them. Does anybody have a spouse like that who immediately you hit the door and bam, they're the social queen of the room, right? If that's my problem, I can say, I know you love to catch up with your friends. I know that's important to you. But maybe could you look across the room and smile at me every now and then, so I know that we're connected, that you're here with me. Yep. It's getting quiet in here. You know, the alternative is to say, why do you always desert me at these events? I never, right? You're so mean, you're so cruel, you don't even love me anymore, right? If you can hear the difference, you know, which approach would you want to hear when we start? Choose to leave for a limited amount of time. We've talked about this, you know, it's a short time. We don't expect this to be a long period, and we expect it to be in agreement with your spouse. Because I can guarantee you, and I'm going to talk to you about it in the next session, that one of you solves conflict by talking, and you literally are married to someone who solves the conflict by going to another room. Right? Yes? Okay. So we need to figure out how to do that better. That 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, like I said, may not be enough, but we have to agree on it. And establish hot words. I told couples, you just can't pull out the word divorce because it's not happening. I'm going to say honestly that I was with family members that, we don't divorce in our family. Clearly, come on, we don't divorce in our family, even when we should have. We have longevity, right? It's a legacy we want to leave. And they're pulling out that word in front of me, in front of a marriage counselor, for crying out loud, these people. And these are my, relatives. And I just had to look them in the eye and say, we don't divorce. What is the other word that you need to say? What's going on with you? But this isn't it. Before there was actually phone dictionaries, I've heard of people pulling that page out of a dictionary. It's not an option unless you're in trouble in some way. So you take it off the table. And then the answer is we have to solve a problem. Right? So asking those clarifying questions, we've talked about this, the validating, Number 3, get quiet and remind yourself to include the Holy Spirit. Now, is that number 3? No, probably number 1. You're not alone anyway. God's there anyway. So I would invite him into this process. And the worst part, I tell people, the Holy Spirit's there when you guys are being intimate too, by the way. So invite him into the process. It's his gift. Make this better for us. Help us solve this. You'd be surprised how many times he will answer that prayer. Right? So during our breaks, we agree what's coming against us, and we pray about that together. I want to say this about prayer. Neil said that on the broadcast. 1 in 2 marriages, we know, actually, the number has gone down, but 1 in 2 marriages get divorced, right? Even in the church. And that number has gone down not for great reasons. It's got down because people are not getting married. It's not that they're still not having conflict. But 1 in 1,426 marriages that pray together get divorced. You want to foolproof your marriage? Now, this is not just sitting your little heinies in the church together. It's not watching Ralph pray over you. It's not doing a devotional together, unless, of course, that includes prayer. But it's actually spending time in prayer. This is not written anywhere, but I contend that's more intimate than sex, by far. You can find sex anywhere. Pick up your phone. But actually being spiritually intimate with somebody like that will change how you interact. And men, that's what it means to be a covering. It is by far the sexiest thing you can do. You want to turn on your wife? Pray over her. There's something inside of us as women that go, oh, that feels so good. I feel so safe. I feel so protected. You took off this morning praying over me and my family and my kids. Women, am I right? It's amazing. You're like, oh, that's so cool. When Neil and I were getting back together, and he said, what do you like about me? I was like, not much right now. Not much. But I loved that you were a spiritual warrior for our family. You with me? Men are like, whoa, that was easy. Didn't need to get new underwear. You need to do that. All right. When you get back together, follow the tips of good listening. Remember we talked about that? Take in time and listen to your spouse's point of view. 5, emphasize the positive, de-emphasize the negative. That's what I'm talking about is, remember what's positive about your spouse. What's positive about the DMV, remember? Okay? Try to see it from their point of view, if at all possible. Holy Spirit, show me what in the world's going on in that crazy brain. What are they thinking? How can I see it from their point of view? And remember, there's no prize for being right. And if we're not able to find a resolution with these steps, take a break and start again. Go back and see what you're holding, because you're holding something. I guarantee it. You've not resolved, the distance between you. Is this easy? No. Is it easier to put on Netflix? Yes. But if you want to have a great marriage or a great relationship with anyone, I don't want to hold this just to marriages. These are working through a conflict with anyone. All right, so I want to talk about one last thing on page 31, I think. Nope, 32. I want you guys to work on trust, because a lot of times when I have had difficult communication / seasons, maybe even difficult seasons. Neil, I would call what Neil and I went through seasons. Rebuilding or losing trust in a relationship. This person that I want to give everything to, that I believe I want to be that connected with, takes nothing. It's like a penny jar, and you dump it out in one event. And unfortunately, I rebuild one penny at a time. So Neil, when he was rebuilding trust, had to be very consistent in what he was doing. He had to, remember she likes this, she likes that. And it probably was really annoying, but he was having to put those pennies back one at a time. Now, I know that was a big trust. I know betrayal was a big trust. But we can lose trust on a lot smaller things, right? You don't remember to do this thing consistently for me. Put your arm around me. You don't remember to do that, so I don't feel loved. Right? So I want to talk with you about that, and I need to, like I said, that lady who had cancer, we need to rebuild that trust in that relationship. So I need to be able to ask the questions. What does it take to rebuild that trust? What are we going to, what are the things that will make you feel like I'm investing in this relationship again? That's if you're on the downside of that, because the truth of the matter is, this is, where Neil and I got to, is when there is a betrayal, when there is a dumping of the penny jar, there's a power differential in your relationship. And since I'm the one who got betrayed, I got the power. I got the power, right? But eventually a covenant looks like this. So it can't stay like that. It can't. That's not healthy. So in order to do that, I have to learn to trust again. And I need my spouse to invest time in that. Now there's a quiz in there to learn if you're just not a very trusting person. There might have been some stuff even in your past, and there's some tips on rebuilding trust in your relationship that I think I would really love you to work through if that's something that, you and your spouse struggle with. If you're a normal couple, you and your spouse struggle with it, because there's been times where some things have been broken. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk about emotional connection. I love emotional connection. But while you're taking a break, I'm going to give you homework. Page 28. I find this kind of interesting. And it will help, I hope, help you. If you have a very task-oriented person and a very relational-oriented person, you'll understand why she or he can never leave church, for crying out loud, because they're always talking to 2 more people on the way out the door, right? And how the difference of you two making decisions. You know, it's just a quick little quiz. So we'll see you back here at 10:45. Is that okay? A little time to take this quiz, to get a little snack, and then we're going to start up at 10:45. Okay? Okay. Is that good? Okay. Are we learning stuff? All right.
Okay, we're going to start pretty soon. Thank you all. We usually have to put this session early enough in the morning that my thinking brain still works. But it's we often find with couples, it's one of the highlights of the conference because so often we're stuck in a rut of the same fight, the same script. And Diane does a wonderful job of helping us understand not just why it's happening, but also how to reach for your partner at the moment they need your help the worst. So we want you to grab this material. I believe that it's going to change the script in your home.
Okay, I think we're on page 16. All right, we're on page 16. And do we have that video? You guys are doing an amazing job, by the way. It's like following no leader. I'm just kind of wandering. They're like, okay.
I just want to say thank you all for coming.
Oh, thanks for having us.
And I want to make a toast to friendship.
Susie.
Yes, to friendship.
To friendship and to be with
Cheers.
everyone. Eyes, please.
Cassie, Harry.
Cheers.
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 Larry, you can't look me in the eye and toast?
Look you in the eye?
Yeah.
Towards what end?
Because that's what people do.
Get
They
outta
look each
here.
other in the eye.
What is this, a seance? We're raising people from the dead? Come on, give me a break.
No, we're connecting and having some intimacy.
I don't need to connect, okay? I'm connected.
What are you afraid of?
What does it do?
You're saying, hello,
You're
I
saying,
see you, I acknowledge you, I connect with you, right?
Hello, I see you. I acknowledge you. I connect with you.
Okay, very funny. You made your point. I think you're
You
rude.
see us?
I just want to say thank you all for coming.
Oh, thanks for having us.
And I want to
that was
make a
it.
toast to friendship.
Susie.
Yes, to friendship.
Okay. So more funny to tell us that we need to really connect if we're really, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about attachment, okay? And how many of you have taken a personality test? Right? Yes, and I give them, right? And here's the deal with most personality tests. Like I'm on a Myers-Briggs. I'm an INFJ. I don't think so. I was. But the chances that I still think I'm an introvert are probably little to none. Right? And they're not what I would call, they're not static. We change and evolve as human beings. That being said, I could take that little quiz and be almost anything I wanted to be. Not that I would cheat like that, but there's, a semblance of it's subjective to how I'm feeling that day and how I'm thinking and what I want to be. So attachment, when I came across this, when I was doing training, I was like, it's kind of a personality test, but it's kind of wonderful because it's something that's developed before you are one. Before you are one, you have a map in your brain of how you're going to look at relationships. How well you're going to trust them. How important they'll be to you. How much of a comfort they will be to you. But the really cool thing is it's not static, it's fluid. Meaning, who I'm in relationship with will affect that attachment style that I have. So if I'm in relationship with a fairly healthy, secure person, that's what we're going to call a healthy person, I will be, if I'm not, I will be tipped to be more of that. And I say that to the point was this is the bell that went off in my head. We all have God as an option, as a healthy, secure being in our lives that we can model ourselves after. Even if what we've experienced is not that, we all have that. And I know that attachment from the beginning was his idea. I mean, he could have stayed and created the world and just left everything alone. But he didn't. He created Adam and then he created Eve. There was a reason that he thought that it was good to be in community and connection with other people. We've talked about how that affects our brain, but it affects a lot more than that. So I want to talk about a little bit about attachment. Is it possible? Well, let me give you a little history. In the 80s, there was a couple, Hazen and Shaver. There'll be a quiz, so you know their names. That set up 4 styles of attachment, and we want to talk about those because it does matter in how we connect as a couple or as in relationship in general. I can have an attachment style with my spouse that's fairly secure or insecure. Anything that's not on point secure is called insecure, so don't take that personal. But I can have a full different relationship with my pastor, with my parents, with my kids. Okay? So again, this thing's very fluid depending on who you're in a relationship, and include in that number or that scenario God. I can have a very different relationship with God. All right. So if you go, 2 things. If you go to our website, thefamilycollective.co, is it on the back of the book somewhere or something? You can take an attachment quiz, a quick attachment quiz, that'll give you an idea of your general attachment style. Bearing in mind, I want you to be thinking about your spouse when you take that quiz. You can go ahead and take it again and think about your mother if you want to. But, we're thinking about your spouse when you're taking that quiz so you can see right there. Okay. And that, if you have your phones, please do pull them out and scan that code. Because every time we go to Brazil, we have a talk, and 1,000 people join following us. And every time we go to the States, they're like, I don't care. And our media people are like, please, did you even mention it? I'm like, most likely not. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're going to give you a bunch of tips weekly, on how this relationship stuff works. We're actually going to do a great big, I think, YouTube channel on the new book, on, restoring that identity, where we'll meet out there, at set times, and I will just talk with you about what's going on. Thank you for doing that. We should take a picture of that so Rachel, congratulates me. What? No doubt. Okay, well, Neil, will you text her and tell her to send the right one and we'll do it again? Okay. Send her the right one. We must have the wrong one. All right, so can you play for me the video of the mom and the baby? This was an experiment that was done a long time ago. And you'll see it by the age of the people in here. But I want to use it to explain what this attachment looks like in your relationships, okay?
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
You can stop
It's a
it.
little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good.
No babies were harmed in the making of this video. So, yeah, I know, because all the moms out there are like, oh, right? So, what's happening? When I can't connect with my spouse, I look a lot like that. When I realize that there's distance or something between us, and I'm called a pursuer, I'm going to pursue like that baby did. And when I can't reach them, I'm going to point, I'm going to scream, I'm going to make noise. In fact, that pursuer would rather have negative interaction than no interaction. They will kick up a fight when they can't reach you. Right? I was explaining this to an online couple, and I thought that maybe I had really screwed up, because she called me and she said, "Well, I did what I asked you to, I did what you asked me to do, and I got arrested." And I'm like, "Whoa, what? How did you end up arrested?" And she said, "Well, we got into a fight, and he left, went to the next room, so I followed him to the room. Then he went to the garage, so I followed him to the garage. Got in his car, so I got in my car, and I'm like, okay, I can tell this is going somewhere bad. Followed him down the hallway. I got picked up for stalking her own husband. I was like, that is what that looks like when I can't reach you. It's a big deal, right? It's not that I'm trying to kick up a storm. It's because I can't reach you. So I'm going to look at this. I don't know why I don't have this in the book I have to do this every time, but think of this like a T, okay? And at the top of the T is a secure attachment. It's our goal. Why is it our goal? In a secure attachment, both people experience the relationship as a safe place to be. There's probably a slide on this somewhere, okay? Security in our relationship helps us to better regulate our emotions. It helps us to process information better when we feel secure, okay? It's why the Bible says what it says about marriage. Security helps us to be more open, to be more assertive, and more empathetic in our communication. Security helps us to have a more positive sense of self, not just of other, of self. And in relationships, both partners are emotionally accessible, open, all the stuff that I've been talking about, vulnerable to each other, right? They get true enjoyment in their relationship. They're more likely to have a high self-esteem. They offer support when their partner feels distressed. This is if you're secure yourself. And this is very important. They will also go to their partner for comfort. It's not just that, I'm going to offer you comfort. I'm going to actually go to you for comfort. And how many of you can say that that's really a hard thing to do? Right? It's probably because I'm not feeling this safety. So clearly this is our goal. Well, at the bottom of this little T is what we call a fearful or disorganized attachment style. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going over that, but I'm going to tell you that child very, very early on has had some abandonment or trauma. Very, very. Remember we said before one? They literally don't trust people. They have kind of a push-pull. So if you are married to this person, it's a little more difficult because they want you to come to them, but they're going to stop you. It's like, come, far enough, come, far enough. So they're constantly pulling at you, but they're afraid of that connection, right? And they will probably display some of the behavior traits that are in these two that I'm going to talk about. Some of both. So if you see yourself when you take this quiz, you're like, wow, I found myself doing both of those. There's a possibility that you're in that more disorganized. None are bad, they all are. They just are. I tend to believe that God knows who you are and how He created you, and according to His word, He says you're good. Right? So I don't want you to walk away and go, oh, I'm not perfect. Right? I want you to walk away and say, we need to be more secure for each other so we can get to that secure place as a couple. All right? So that disorganized person, I want to read a little bit about that. Skipping around here. It often develops from abuse, trauma, or chaos in the home. The child learns to fear their caregiver, and they have no real secure base in their life. And that person lives in a state in which they're afraid of being too close or too far from their partner. And they tend to keep those feelings at bay, but they kind of like boil over, right? They often are overwhelmed by their reactions and experience emotional storms. And they see relationships from the working model that you need to go toward others to get your needs met, but if you get too close, they might hurt you. It's a conundrum to be in that one. And honestly, if you have had that chaos in your home early on, you see yourself there, this is a really great place to start some self-journey healing, because you don't want to be there. You don't want to be in the place where you can't be in relationship with people. You can't be vulnerable. You can't trust them. Because it's a hard place for you to be. It's just a hard place for you to be. Okay? And again, if you've got some abuse in your background, there's a chance that this is out there. They tend to find themselves in rocky or dramatic relationships with many highs and lows. I think you're seeing this at the top of 17, right? And you should be having slides on this so that they can see that. What secure looks like, yep. And then we're moving to the fearful. And then I'm going to move back to those two. Go two more. There we go. As adults, these individuals tend to find themselves, oh, I said that. They often fear being abandoned, and they might be considered emotionally unavailable to you. All right. Let's talk about that anxious and that avoidant attachment. All right? Those are these two right here. My anxious attachment is called a pursuer. That's a lady who followed her husband out to the car. And my avoidant attachment is called a withdrawer. All right? So let's talk about that anxious attachment. That attachment starts in a home where you get a lot of conditional love messages. So, I love you if you do something well. And God bless us, well-meaning Christian parents, we do this. We do this. If you do your homework well, if you do your sports well, if you do something well, it's attached to how much I love you. You with me? So what happens when you hear that message a lot? You turn into a little bit of a people pleaser. Because I'm always trying to get those kudos from somebody. I'm always trying to hear that I did a good job even at church. I'm constantly looking for you to affirm me. You with me? I'm putting my power outside of myself. I'm wanting you to tell me I'm okay. I'm wanting you to tell me that we're connected. You're wanting you to tell me that I'm loved. So this person will experience a lot of emotional highs and lows. Why? Because when they're not hearing it, then they're not believing it. Right? So I've got my secure person going, I'm good and you're good. Both can be good at the same time. Right? And I've got my fearful person down here going, I'm bad and you're bad. I don't believe in myself and I can't trust you. Right? This person is actually saying, you're good. You could love me if you wanted to, but I'm not enough. I'm not good. I'm not worthy of being loved. Can you see yourself there? Some of you? Yeah? And it's where you kind of get stuck. And what happens when they don't feel loved, they can become highly clingy. If you're not telling me that, I'm going to what we call poke. I'm going to poke at you. I need to hear that message, right? I need to hear from you. I hear from the spouses, it's like a torture drip treatment. She's just constantly asking me, what's wrong? Are you okay? Why aren't you talking about that? Are we okay? What are you mad about? Right? And I will keep poking with, well, now, because you haven't settled down, now you're always that way. Well, bottom line, I'm just not feeling the love. I'm not feeling that connection. Go back to that little baby. I'm not feeling connected to you. Right? See, he doesn't really love me. If he did, he'd be here. So I shouldn't trust him. Right? He'll never let me down. People are not there for me. He'll never be there for me. If he was just more affectionate, I wouldn't get so mad. Guys, feel yourself saying that? Their protection mechanism, remember this, they are protecting themselves when they're asking questions because they're trying to get that connection back. They're not trying to drive you nuts, they're trying to protect themselves. I like examples, as you can tell, and please don't take this personally, but they often look a little bit like a toddler. You know, if a toddler comes at you and they want your attention and you don't give it to them, that was you yesterday with the babies out there. Did they go away, Angie? No. They're not going to go away. They're going to kick your knee. They're not going away. They're going to get your attention. And that's what happens with this attachment style. They're not going to stop. They need to be connected. Okay? Because, this is important for you to remember, their greatest fear is being rejected or abandoned. Their protection mechanism is to poke at you and ask questions, but their greatest fear is that somehow you don't love me. All right? I want to say that as a whole. Every now and then I run into couples that have a different style, but just say as a whole, that's what their biggest fear is. Their unmet need is that I need love from you. All right, well, let's go to that avoidant or that withdrawer person, okay? They can come from childhoods that are actually neglectful or too busy parents or parents that don't know how. And I would actually say the older you are, this is the kind of parenting you got. Take care of it yourself. Buck it up, suck it up, get your big boy panties on, and take care of it yourself, right? Dust it off. Is that what you hear? Dust it off, dust it off. And here's the deal with that, is it creates an emotional hole in somebody. What toddler doesn't love to be loved? So I've got a toddler go into the nurturing hole. Here's my parents right here. Go into this nurturing hole, and my parents are too busy, don't know how to do it, learning from what they learned from their parents, and they tell me to figure it out, right? So I go away to my room, which this is and figure it out. I mean, I used to watch these kids in the restaurant just coloring by themselves. You know, my kids are coloring each other in the walls and eating the crayons, and I'm like, how do you do that? How do you get a kid to do that? Because this child has learned how to be self-sufficient very early on, right? They've learned that I trust me, but I don't trust that you will nurture me. So this one is kind of saying, I'm good, but I don't know about you guys. And it's not that I don't like you, it's not that I don't trust you, because they will tend to have friends from way back when that they've known for a really long time, because that trust in them, it's taken a long time. It's earned. And one of them is their spouse. And so when it's not going well with my spouse, this is not a good thing, because that's one of my deep trusting people. Right? Is this making sense? Some of you getting this? The picture that this person is, and I can say this in Ohio, I can't say this in California, but in Ohio, if you've ever been hunting, right? And an animal gets fatally wounded, it ducks under a tree to die, right? What happens if you stick your hand under there? You're going to get bit. It's not dead yet. So if you keep poking, it's going to go away. This person's going to go away like they did with a kid. They're going to go away and try to figure this out. They're not going away to disturb you. They're going away to go inside their head and figure this out. Right? And as they're trying to figure it out, if you keep coming at me, I'll eventually blow and bite. Okay? And they are called a withdrawer for a very good reason, because their protection mechanism is to withdraw. That's how they protect themselves. It's what they learned early on. Back away and go solve this thing. Go try to figure this out. Right? Their biggest fear, their unmet need, is from this early on point. I'm going to let somebody down. If I don't get this right, I'm going to fail. Right? I'm going to disappoint somebody no matter what I do. So emotionally, I've got this anxious over here that's got this fear. That's the big emotion. Fear of what? Fear of that I'm going to be rejected. Hey, you were supposed to be, yeah, you're on the avoidant. Good job. Can you turn to that infinity circle? There you go. And emotionally over here, I've got this withdrawer that has this unmet need of not wanting to fail people. But what is his emotion? And every time I talk about this, I'm going to tell you what I commonly see. I commonly see their primary emotion is shame. And every time I say it, they're like, I don't feel shame. I'm like, okay, wait, let me help you. Are you proud of what's happening right now in your relationship? No. The opposite of that is I'm disappointing someone. So what's triggering me? Most likely shame. So let's figure this out with this pursuer and this withdrawer, all right? Do you know which one you are? Fill your name in there. Am I the pursuer or the withdrawer? Get out your little book, people. I need you to fill this in. Because inevitably somebody's going to come to me later and go, I didn't write that down. I'm like, okay, well, write it down. Oh, there it is. Page 17. We talked about those 4 styles of attachment, what a pursuer and a withdrawer feel like. These 2 people, by the way, absolutely will find each other. I'm going to tell you what God told me when we're done with this. 100%. If you leave this relationship, you're going to go find another one. So every time someone comes to me and says, well, I can't live with this person, I'm like, well, that's great, because you're going to live with them. They're just going to have a different face. Pursuer, withdrawer, okay? Secondary emotions. I like see that line, that dot in the middle? I like it to kind of liken like an iceberg. There's above the line what I'm going to show you when we're mad. And there's the below the line that we're not in a good place and I'm not willing to show you. Okay? Above the line, that secondary emotion, that tends to be some form of anger. We're not in a good place. I'm frustrated. I'm, all the way up to enraged. I'm in a bad place with you. So for both the pursuer and withdrawer, I need you to fill in anger. For both of them, that's where they get. They get frustrated and eventually they'll either keep it inside. And I want to tell you that you may not say your anger, but if you're a withdrawer, you get a chest ache, you get a stomach ache, you get a backache, you get a headache. Guess what that is? Emotions. It's your anger. Just sitting there. Your spouse may be able to pop them off quickly, but you're holding yours. All right? So for that primary emotion on both the pursuer and the withdrawer, remember we talked about that pursuer, that's that fear. Fear of what? Being rejected. That's that unmet need. That primary emotion is fear. The unmet need for that pursuer is feeling rejected, not loved, abandoned in some way. Okay? Filling it in? Okay, thank you. For that withdrawer, my primary emotion, when we talked about this, it's most likely that shame, disappointment. That's what I feel when we're not getting along. But the unmet need, I don't want to fail. And here's a little clue that I learned as going through all the training on this. Took 2 years. It's not an easy model to learn. They make you send in live videos of all your clients. But here's the thing I learned going through all these clients. If I go under that pursuer and I go, that unmet need is that they don't want to be rejected, right? But then I've got that withdrawer, that unmet need is that they don't want to fail this relationship. What happens in their mind if they keep failing? They eventually will be rejected as well. So bottom line, it's a fear for both of you. It's not the one that sticks out, but bottom line, neither one of us wants to get there. All right, so we got it all filled out because here's the magic. This is so good. And I want to say this to say, this cycle is the problem. This is what we're going to get rid of. Not the people. Again, they are who they are. All right? So I'm a withdrawer. Start with withdrawer. And I get in, oh, did you guys see the little red dot? Neil's so good. Yep. And I get in a fight with my spouse. What's the first thing I want to do? What's my protection? Withdraw. Yay, you guys are so good. Come on, 100. So I withdraw. What does that immediately tell my spouse? My withdrawing immediately tells them they're rejected. They're going to feel fear about that, but they're going to show you what? Yep. And so I'm that pursuer. What am I going to do now? We're in a bad place. I'm going to start poking. And what does that tell my spouse? Stop. They're failing. They're not getting this right. They're disappointing me in this whole relationship. And they're withdrawers, so what they're going to do? We're going to keep withdrawing. That is what needs to be solved in your relationship. We need to get to an understanding of how I let that person know, now that I know what's going on with me in the moment, so that I can not only tell you what my needs are, but you can respond. I used to do a live one of these, and the people were crying so hard, it got to be a very depressing thing. But I think it's important for us to know that that emotional connection, what's happening underneath the picture, is what's really happening in our relationship in that moment. Now, I want two things. I want you to ask questions, and then I'm going to send you to work on a worksheet together. So this is not an easy concept. I have dumbed down someone's 10, 20 years of research to an hour for you guys. So, but I'm trying to help you understand how important that attachment style, how I learned early to be emotionally safe or not safe, is affecting how I'm connecting with you. Early on, I asked the Lord, I said, why are you sending me all these opposite people? I mean, clearly, what are you thinking? Get two of them together that have the same thing going on. Maybe that will work out better for them. Or here's the, let's everyone be secure. That's probably not going to happen either. And he told me that that we literally complete each other. That those two attachment styles together make a whole. Because bottom line, if I'm a more anxious attachment and I show up at church and Patty doesn't want to talk to me today, and I get in the car and I say to my husband, Patty was mean to me today. She didn't want to talk to me. What's happening to me? I'm feeling rejected, right? What's his response going to be? You withdrawers, what's your response to that? Exactly. Who cares what she thinks? Remember, we're back to I'm giving all my approval to another person versus I'm much more secure internally. In fact, that withdrawer can come off a little cocky. Sorry, withdrawers. But it's because they're a little more secure on the inside about this. Now, that doesn't make them any more perfect, but what happens with that conversation when we have it in a healthy way? I'm in the middle, right? It's the epitome of the example that we just talked about. That person is drawing me to see it from another perspective. That, hey, Patty could be having a bad day. Hey, Patty was really busy. She had to run and get this. Hey, that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. Right? So let me take that withdrawer, God bless them. They don't like leaving plan A. Why is that? Yes, plan B is a failure, for crying out loud. We have a plan. We're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. I have people that have literally broken their families financially because they wouldn't get out of an investment or something. I'm like, stop. Plan B does not mean you're failing. Well, they, by nature, are married to the most flexible person in the whole world. They got plan B, C, D in their pocket already. You know, what happens? Right? So I'm able to like have that voice of reason going, okay, well, that's not going to work out. Rather than like not go today, we could take the dirt road. Right? I always have this comment with Neil, was he's a withdrawer. I'm like, this car does turn around, you know. It's like, we missed the exit. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? Drive off into infinity? We failed? I mean, seriously, this car does turn around. Right? So in reality, you know, the two make a greater one. Because I'm able to, you know, speak into that unmet need that my partner has. Right? I love that. I love that God had a plan. I love that He had a plan that none of us would be perfect, that we would need each other, and that we would need each other in this way. But it's not easy to need that person, to actually sit down and go, give me your perspective on this. Because I'm seeing it from this way. Patty doesn't love me anymore. I need to hear, you know, how you're seeing it. And because of that, I'm going to be a more secure person. Isn't that cool? Now, I told you, this is the greatest thing. I mean, when I learned this theory, I was like, oh, this is so good. How do we make this work, you know, in a bigger arena like this? Because it's usually meant for a one-on-one couple. I do have an example that I would like the two of you to work on. If you're here alone, I just want you to work what? Oh, that's so cool. Let's talk about that. Because that's a good feeling thing before we get there. This couple of newborns were born like at 2 pounds or something like that. And they're about, I think, probably mid-20s or 30s now. And one of the siblings was was stronger and clearly going to make it. And it looked like one of them wasn't going to make it. And the night nurse, at the time, they didn't have this attachment. They didn't understand. If you're watching all the attachment now with all the fathers who take their shirts off and, right, they didn't understand, the importance of this attachment. So they had these babies in separate cribs, and parents weren't even they didn't stay, at the hospitals. They didn't even really visit. Now we have that, kind of adjusted. But they were required by hospital policy to be in separate cribs. And it looked like that evening that one of them wasn't going to make it. And so in her desperation, she put the two of them together in a crib. And the stronger of her two threw her arm around that newborn baby. And that baby's heart went back up to normal. Blood pressure went back up to normal. It was amazing to watch. But again, the power of attachment. This is how important this is. It can be a matter of life for your relationship. Cool? Very cool. All right, so let's work on page 18 and 19 together. Now, 18 is the questions. 19 are the cheat answers if you can't come up with them. Or some cheat answers. I would tell you this, if you can fill it in without that, great, fill it in without that. If you know what the behaviors look like in your relationship, fill it in without that. But if you can't, go to the cheat feelings behaviors test. And this is something that I want you to actually take home and with your significant other. So do it yourself. Like if you're alone in here today, just do it how I see my half of the coin, and then have your spouse do and talk about it, when you get home. Okay? Because I don't want you to mind read for them. That's why I don't want you to see their point of view. Let them tell you what they see going on. All right? So you both are going to fill this out, and then you're going to sit and talk about it a little bit. Fair? Okay.
wanted to provide a little time for you to ask questions if you have with regard to any of the material that Diane went through. There's a lot in there. Our goal is to help you break that cycle and learn how to be available and to reach for your partner at the very point that they need it, not triggered by what we have. Right? So when we begin to reach for a partner when they need it, we develop what's called emotional intimacy. And I believe that that's a huge part of where we're lacking. And guys, you want emotional intimacy way worse than you're even afraid to admit. And it's okay. So, questions? I'm going to run around and play Vanna White. So, ask questions of Diane.
I feel like I'm the pursuer, but I don't feel it came from like my parents, like abandonment or anything. I feel like it came from just not like believing in myself and like getting to a point of where I was overweight and just lack of self-esteem and all that, you know. I don't feel like it definitely didn't come from my parents. I think it was something that over time was in me that I created instead of...
You're talking the nature-nurture thing, and I will tend to somewhat agree with you. I mean, I know the theory, because, you know, we had three boys, and they had different attachment styles. They have different attachment styles. But remember what I said about, like, this is kind of set in your brain before you're one, and then as you go through life, it can get better or worse. So if I'm constantly in a battle of, like what you're saying, you know, this is just going to keep tilting, right? So, is it what? Middle child? Yeah, I don't know. Even there's all kinds of theories. That's a whole nother thing that we can talk about. Maybe if we do a family conference, we'll talk about that. But it's if we're talking just attachment, it's like my insecurity just keeps going. Rather than getting more secure in who I am and what I believe in, my insecurity just keeps going. Sure, absolutely.
I feel like, so as I grew more confident in
Yeah.
myself, and even in my relationship with my wife, and she's not here today, but I would say this if she was here. I feel like as I grew more confident with her and her being in my life and just building confidence, I think what happened is, like, I was so like lackadaisical, like, and just pushing stuff away and just dealing with stuff. I think as I grew confident, I didn't want to be like pushed or stepped on, you know. So I think that's why I stand up for myself more, like in a argument or something like that, you know.
You're more secure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, but I need to. But what I would just want to say one more thing. Like, the Holy Spirit's been reminding me not to react to her reaction, and it's just something I have to pray for, because that's not easy.
Amen. I think you'll get a lot of amens in here. Pastor?
Yeah, I'm relating to what you're saying about, you know, the attachment style, and I find myself, you know, I'm definitely the withdrawer,
Definitely.
no problem. Well, it's a problem, but, you know, I don't
It's
have a
not a
problem
problem.
identifying that, but I find that, you know, I don't have a problem when it's just me jumping off of plan A and going to plan B, and I have all of those in my work life. I only have a problem when she suggests my plan doesn't work.
Ah.
And
There's a
then I
lot to
find-
be said for that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I need help in that.
Yeah.
'Cause I can't break that. I just, you know, it's internal. It's just like, it just triggers.
So remember we talked about more than once, why do I get triggered about something? Right. I love that, he's just like making my point. I'm great when I'm by myself in my own head. I can do whatever I want and nobody needs, right? But as soon as someone triggers me, and it wouldn't just be your wife, it'd probably be people, at church or that didn't like how the budget was or something, as soon as someone triggers me, I go to that place where I feel that thing I feel, whatever it is. Internally, deep inside me, I don't feel like I did a good enough job. Or I'm not doing a good enough job, because if I was, they wouldn't be mentioning it. When, in fact, she could just be bringing up plan B and have nothing to do with the job that you're doing. And you are not the only one. I'm so glad you brought this up, because you are by far not the only one in this room doing that. That's a part of this attachment material that is essential, is I have to realize when I'm triggered, and I got to have an understanding of when you're triggered. Because if I'm going to relate this better, I got to know both. Right? I got to be able to offer you my trigger. Honey, when you say that, when you come to me with those suggestions, here's what happens to me. I get to that place where I start doubting myself, I start questioning what's wrong, and actually I feel more alone in this relationship when that happens than together, because I feel like I've done something wrong. Right? And my spouse's response is hopefully, now I got to tell you, when I'm starting out with couples, sometimes that I will get that person to a vulnerable place, and then the spouse will come shoot him. I'm like, put the gun away. We finally got him there, So hopefully her response, would be, that's not, I understand that that's a trigger. That's not, how I meant to relate to that. How would it be better that I responded? What would it look like for me to give you solutions without you going to that trigger? Help me with that. Right? But two things have to happen. One, you got to know your triggers. Two, she needs to know your triggers. That's why we just did the worksheet. And are you going to get it all done in one worksheet? No. But you'll get an understanding. And if you turn the page on that, there's an exercise to help you with attachment wounds. So you get an idea of where those woundings happened. Yes, did I answer your question? I just gave you more work. Isn't that wonderful? I'm just a good deflector. You figured that was coming.
I'm actually kind of both.
Yep.
I'll be the pursuer, and then she gets to a point, and then I withdraw because I give her time to think about it. And then I always get a text, even if she's going to work, or I'm sorry, or whatever, and stuff like that.
So let's do this. Is it ever your thought? I get the two pieces, but is it ever your thought to withdraw from the beginning? First thing, what's the first thing you want to do when you guys get upset with each other?
I'll definitely pursue.
You want to ask what's going on.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not both. You've just learned some actual good skill. You've learned how to take a time out.
Yes.
And figure out that that's not working for you to constantly do the drip torture with her. And because of that, you're actually getting to a place of reconciliation, because she's reaching back out to you. You're giving her time to reach back out. So actually, I see what you're saying as a good thing. Take it one step further, like I just explained to the pastor. Say, okay, what was it that you needed from me? How can I meet that need in that situation? She got triggered because she withdrew, so you went to pursue, right? And so what happened in that situation? What is it that I can do differently that doesn't cause the disconnection? How can I be safe in the moment for you?
That's exactly what I do.
Well, come on. You all need to learn from him.
Smart. Seriously. Yeah.
That's amazing. Neil's gotten there. It's taken him 20 years.
Sometimes pride can get in the way.
Others? Yeah.
So actually have a couple, and one of them is, maybe it's just North Dakota people that are this way. But,
We're from North Dakota, people.
like, and I'm not here for marital counseling. I'm here to, to learn.
For the other
So,
guy.
for the other guy,
Okay.
yeah. This isn't about us.
So they're,
But
I'm
I do
asking
have
for a
couple
friend.
questions. I'm asking for a friend. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of times, one party knows the way things have to happen, and there's no change in that. And I know that's that Plan A thing.
Yep.
But we also understand that the devil knows these things about us as well, and that he's going to monopolize and manipulate those traits in us.
For sure.
Faithfulness can be manipulated, loyalty and dedication, because you feel like if you don't stick to that plan, that you've let somebody down or you've not been faithful to that thing. So how do you deal with that, knowing that the enemy knows that about us as well?
Neil, that's a good question to answer for you. I have the technical answer, but I want you to answer.
One of the things that I've had to learn is the most important scheme of the devil is that you're two, you're not one. So when you start, it has to be our plan, not my plan, and then I'm talking you into it. It's help me craft this together so that we start from a place of one, okay? I think sometimes as guys, we feel pressure to have the answer. And I got through college on a C average, because that's what they gave people back then. Go ahead, I'll let you do the right answer.
No. The technical answer is you're feeling the same thing that, that he said, or no, that the other pastor said. I'm getting triggered by someone's input. Someone's input is making me feel like I'm not doing this right? Now, I'm not saying that that means you switch plans. Just don't get triggered by the input. Right? I'm saying if you're getting triggered by the input, that's when we start that cycle.
Start with the collaboration, yeah.
Right. Start with okay, that doesn't, hear me out. And guys, work on what the triggers are. You got to be honest. If this was you, not your friend, tell your friend that you got to be honest with what got triggered. You got to know what got triggered. You just triggered in me that I may have done this wrong, that I didn't make the best decision at this. That gives her a chance to go, that's not where I'm going with that I'm actually thinking through other possibilities. You're not a failure. The plan might need another looking at.
Yeah. Another friend of mine, he just texted me telepathically, and
you have a lot of friends.
I do. They're not all good friends. I need to change that community. So
some of them got problems, huh?
Yeah. Are there times when the person that withdraws likes the pursuit? And how do we deal with that? Because, sometimes it feels like if we're that person that is the pursuer, that we're getting sent down. And I'm not saying this about my wife, but I think it's something that we need to rationalize and realize. We like to send people down the wrong trail. We're really not addressing that thing that's really
triggering me.
I'm
going back to those
We're
triggers.
throwing it off as something else. And I'm a pursuer. I want to know what I did, because I honestly have no idea what I did most of the time. And the last question in the study was the hardest one for me to answer. I don't know if that's typical for the people.
Which is?
I'd have my wife read it for me.
That's the bottom line that we need to get to.
Because
what got triggered and what I need from you to make that not feel triggered. Okay? What I need from you. That's huge to feel connected and secure in this relationship. And I'm giving you the cheat words for a reason. I need to feel accepted. I need to feel loved. I need to not feel alone. I need to feel important and valued by you. I'll tell the story of I had a gentleman who was fairly famous that I was dealing with, and he had gone to New York. He'd done this great big talk, and he was on one of those great big Trons behind him, and he's talking to me about this Tron, which I'd never seen one, so like I was asking questions. And honestly, this was my bad, couples counseling. I'm asking about, his event. But what happened was his spouse got so mad. She stood up and she read him the riot act and me the riot act. I'm so sick and tired of everybody thinking that you're so wonderful and you're so important and and I'm like, okay, this is not good, right? And after I got things calmed down, she got to the place, that you're talking about. He turned to her and said, "You're right. I got a lot of fans. But there is one person that I need to hear from, that I am valued and loved and important. And most days, she won't tell me. What do I long for in this relationship? That's being really honest. What do I need from you? Not just what triggers me, but what do I need from you?"
And
right?
I want to add for guys, most of us got raised to have that tough exterior. And it's the scariest thing to ask for what we need. We think that makes us less of a guy.
They should know it, for crying out loud, right? They live here. But they don't.
I usually tell groups when I end up in counseling, unwillingly, crash landed into my destiny. My counselor is looking at me and saying, raised by a military father, played sports, did corporate turnaround at a high level, and she said, "Name an emotion." I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." She said, "You have a Marine complex." I'm celebrating. I'm thinking she finally got me. I thought it was a compliment. She looked at me and said, "That's not a compliment. Your head and your heart are disconnected." So for a lot of us as guys, we need to figure out how to voice. We actually know it. It's that voice deep inside it. I think that's what you're hitting at, which is we want desperately for that reach, okay? But we also have a tough outer shell, and usually our words are a defense mechanism to keep people at a safe distance. And it's very hard for your spouse to reach past that often, okay? So I want to encourage you, the true strength is not what I don't need, it's being able to voice what I truly want. Okay?
I will add this. For pursuers that are male, because it's so foreign to me to pursue emotionally, like what you're talking about, and I'm not saying this is, you can tell your friend this, but it is more normal to pursue physically then, because it's risky to pursue emotionally, right? So I know I want to be connected, so I'm going to constantly think that it's, touching and sex, and that's a difficult place, for your spouse to understand that you're literally trying to pursue emotionally. Does that make sense? Yep.
I just want to share something real brief because I know it's almost 12. But Pastor Ralph, when you mentioned about the enemy, he knows a lot. Okay, I say that to say this. There's a scripture, I believe it's in the New Testament. Give no place to the devil. And other scriptures that support that let me know, as long as I do my part and don't give him place, he can have all the info on me and my husband that he wants. It's our responsibility not to give him place. Now, that being said, I just joined this church family last July. I am legally married. I got married in December of '05, but my husband and I were not spirit-filled. But we were Christians, so we were equally yoked. I was a little bit more mature than him because I prepared myself for marriage. I kind of went to school for it. I read books to prepare me how to be the wife to my husband that God needs me to be. That being said, when we got married, the Holy Spirit was my counselor. I have intimate relationship. And I want to share this with you. I hope it helps somebody, just to help you. When I knew my identity in Christ. When I read scriptures, I believe what God said. The most thing he wants is to be believed. He wants us to believe him. So I do believe Father. I have had encounters with him since I was 16. That being said, my husband and I got married, and there was a situation where my husband wanted me to lie for him. He wanted me to call his boss to call him off work. That violated my conscience. And he wouldn't let up. His pride got in the way, and he wanted me to do his dirty work. Well, I said to myself, Holy Spirit, how do I fulfill my husband's request and not offend you? I don't want to sin. I don't want to lie. Holy Spirit's amazing. I called Bruce. I said, Bruce, Ben wants me to tell you that he cannot come to work because he is sick and throwing up. That's what my husband wanted me to tell him. And Bruce said, okay, Angela, thank you for letting me know. We hung up. Within 30 minutes, my husband began to sweat profusely, and he began to throw up. And it is, I know, it's funny. But because I wasn't spirit-filled, for me, this was a big deal. Because I didn't know the power of words, how you manifest, you reap what you sow. So I saw this, and it blew my mind. But it just made me see the power of God in action real fast this harvest. But unfortunately for my husband, it just wasn't a big deal for him spiritually, like it was me. So that being said, I just want you all to know we are still legally married, but he abandoned me. It was a Labor Day weekend of 2009, but it was for the best. And he will not divorce me out of spite. It's a long story, but it's a testimony that I will be giving at some point when the time is right, but it's not for now. But I just want to let you know that, hey, for those of you that are here, I love marriage. I'm not going to let this, cause me to be bitter, because I know God brought us together. And God, when I asked him, because I was under the, impression what God puts together, let no man separate. Well, to help me to come to grips with my marriage, God led me to the book of Hosea. That was his answer for me. He knew this was going to end this way. It was for the best. But I'm just letting you know my identity is in Christ. And for all of you, it's the same. You get that revelation, and you're going to want to please your spouse because you want to please God. You please God, you automatically please your family, Christian people that have, Jesus. When you please God, he's the first one, then people like your spouse and etc. will be pleased. And then those who aren't, that's because they're not for you, they're against you, they're against God. Thank you. Thank you.
So I have a question. Do you Do you want this relationship? Are you safe?
I'm safe. We're not even in the same states. It's not going to reconcile. It's not. No,
Okay.
it's for the best. But hey, I increased in every way when he left. Marrying him, it was a blessing for me. I learned a lot about myself. God did a lot of pruning. I had no idea I was selfish till I got married. I thought I wasn't selfish. God showed a lot of crap in me, if you will, and a lot of pruning happened, but it was for the good.
Yeah.
It didn't end the way I thought,
Yeah.
but it was for the good. It was definitely God. I mean, you know, things happen. My husband has a free will. I have a free will. So he doesn't override free wills, but it was good for us to be together. I made sure that God was in it.
Well, I want to, so we're going to go to lunch, and I did not realize that we didn't have ability to show PowerPoints downstairs. So I'm going to ask you if it's okay that we do it in 45, 50 minutes and come up here and I'll run through that understanding the generations, okay? So that if you could be back up here by 12:50. All right, so I want to pray for you. What's your name? Angela. Y'all, I want to pray for Angela. Lord, I know you know what Angela has gone through. I know you know that you gave her this spouse, Lord. So I ask in your wisdom, you do what's best and right for her, for this relationship, and for this husband, wherever he is, that he comes to the end of himself, that he comes to his knees and he understands what he's done. Lord, and I ask that you give her an understanding of what you want her to do next, and let her constantly walk in your favor and your goodness and your grace. Amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing. Any other instructions? Yep, you got your own mic. Okay. Do you want this taken care of? This one's on.
All right, we'll be eating downstairs. It's directly below this. Walk back out. Use the bathrooms upstairs. There's also a set downstairs, but if you need bathrooms, divide the two from up and down. But right under here, so go down the back stairwell and then just follow your way through, and we're literally right underneath. We are eating chicken salad sandwiches and pasta salad, and if you are gluten-free, there is a salad option for you as well as dessert. So you're released to head on down. I'll let you.
Father, we thank you for this meal that's been provided. We thank you for the hands that prepared it, and bless it to the nourishment of our mind, body, soul, and spirit. Let us enjoy this time together as we feed together, but also the time we spend together for these 45 minutes, getting to know each other in deeper and more intimate ways. We thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.